All right, let's say hello now to another man who will be competing this Saturday at UFC 260. Massive fight for Tyron Woodley. He's going up against Vicente Luque, a very important fight in his career, and wanted to check in with him before he heads off to Las Vegas and see where he's at. Tyron, I appreciate the time very much. And so
No worries.
I think that is the big question. How do you feel going into this fight? I know it's such a simple cliche question, but I feel like there's a lot riding on this one for you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. A lot of emotion going into this training camp and just into any training camp, to be honest. It's been 15, 16 years of doing this fighting thing. And, you know, my last three fights didn't really make a lot of sense to me. And I really didn't understand. I didn't really place it. But I feel like the things in my life, they were kind of chaotic and kind of all over the place. You got to pay up. You got to pay the piper for some certain seeds you plant in the ground. I feel like I got accustomed to the lifestyle and I started becoming the lifestyle. And I don't think any other form of art took away from mixed martial arts because I do believe everything goes together. I think in about 5 or 6 years, maybe 10 years at the most, you'll start seeing more athletes doing different forms of art. And they'll let you know that it really actually helps because music is such a big part of fighting. We listen to it when we train, we walk out to it. It's an expression. Same thing with television and movies. And you see a lot of people doing analyst work as they're fighting, but no one's saying that them doing analyst work is taken away from their fighting when it's the same thing as me being in a recording studio. So the balance of life for me is a lot different now. I'm back to the basics and just whether it's basic technique or the basic, just not going out and just spending money and doing silly and being all out in the streets. The pandemic really put me back at home where I belong, with my kids and, really put me back in focus. And I do feel like those seeds I planted, I feel like the last thorn bushes are gone, you know what I mean? Because I trained for those fights. I was ready for those fights. I was prepared for those fights. There's nothing that happened, nothing my opponents did that surprised me. And I was just there. I was just watching myself lose. And I'm tired of doing that. So my coaches just have really been working on mentality. It's not so much a skill set thing with me or training or work ethic. Nobody has to push me to work hard. Nobody has to yell at me and call me in the morning or wake me up. I'm already internally motivated to be the best. But mentality wise, they had to put me into like a kind of violent but dangerous mentality. You know what I mean? Everything I'm doing and training is trying to hurt something or hurt somebody or put myself in a position where, the next move that a person makes puts them in a worse situation. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about. And Vicente is a good fighter. They call him the silent assassin because he's very good, but he don't get a lot of credit for how good he is. He's very consistent, very durable, good condition in a lot of his fights that he may have been losing. And towards the end of the fight, he found a way to finish and he found a way to, come out on top. So he's not a guy that you're going to sting with a couple punches or combinations and that's going to be it. He's going to stick around for most of the fight.
You mentioned the violent mentality. How do you develop that? Like how do you flip that switch? What do you guys do?
I just turned it back on. I lived that switch. That switch was my life before organized fighting. You know what I mean? When I grew up in the street, I was a gangbanger. I fought all the time. I used to black out. Didn't remember a lot of stuff. I knocked people out when I was a young kid, and nobody understood how somebody so small can hit somebody and they be unconscious. And that's kind of how I built my name. And I really separated myself from that because it's a part of my life I wasn't really happy with. You know what I mean? And something that God changed me from and moved me to a different place. So when I say I don't like fighting, people don't understand that. Like I fought so much, like for me to want to fight somebody back in the day, you know, I may have thought it was life or death. You know what I mean? If I fall down, somebody's gonna stump you out some Timberland boots or shoot you or whatever the hell else. So for me, I had to separate myself. So then fighting became just competing. It became just a chess match. It became just, strategy and, drawing in somebody else and my technique and forcing them to come into my world. And I abandoned, the kind of rough mentality that I had as a kid, but now I got to just kind of let it out a little bit.
Do you consider this fight do or die for you in the UFC? Do you have to win this fight to stick around in the UFC?
I just got to win this fight for myself. You know what I mean? Because I can win this fight and stick around the UFC and still not compete. My friend Lynn Odie, told me a really, really good quote. He said, be performance centric. Think about performance. Don't think about title fights. Don't think about what's next. Don't think about if I do this, then that. Just be performance centric. Think about performance. And I have a hard time believing that if I go out there and I perform to the level that I'm capable, that anybody's going to beat me in the welterweight division. I just don't believe that. So I think it's do it out for myself. I'm tired of going out there and watching myself allow people that, in my opinion, didn't belong in the cage with me, let alone being able to defeat me, win, and have a victory and have my name on their resume and, have a victory over me that really solidified them. Look at Gilbert, Colby, Usman. I'm the strongest win on their record. I'm the most solidifying victory on their record. They can say whatever they want, but when you look at them, without me on their record, it's not. They're not up for title shots. They don't have a belt around their waist. Less known fighting for one. So it's time for me to go out there and just remember that I'm their biggest fight. I'm Vicente's biggest fight of his career. I need to make them my biggest fight.
Easy to say that though, right? I mean, how do you look at Vicente and say this is the biggest fight when you have fought some of the biggest names in the history of the sport?
And I was training with Antonio Luque, and he did a lot of psychology during this. Now, he's not a psychologist, but instead of, come on, let's go. If I wasn't pushing, he'll say, Tyron, stop. What are you thinking right now? How do you feel right now? Because when I watch you fight, this is how you look in those fights. We need to work through this. Tell me what you're feeling like. What's going through your mind? And one day, I just looked at him and I was like, I don't know. And that's how I felt in the fights. I didn't know. I didn't know why I didn't punch. I saw it. I saw everything. I set up everything. I trained for everything. I was in shape. Nobody stopped me. Nobody made me so tired that I couldn't hold my arms up. I just didn't go. And the first time he asked me that question, it was kind of emotional for me because I didn't have an answer for him. He caught me. Somebody catch you at the right time and ask you the right question. And it's like I felt at that moment like I was feeling in those fights. And he called me out on it, and I didn't have an answer for him. But then our training became intentional, very psychological, very driven on when you get right here, this is what you should be thinking. When you get in this position, this is what you should be thinking. And to get to this position, this is what you got to be willing to go to get to that position. And once you get there, you got to make sure you own it. And without even communicating with my boxing coach, without even communicating with Dean, everybody kind of was on the same page. Now, they may have been talking behind my back, text messaging, calling, but I don't know that. But from what I understand, I think spiritually, everybody was in link. My coach was like, you got to move forward. This is your ring. So when I was sparring in the 8th round of sparring a pro boxer, I looked the best because mentally I'm like this. And I just went forward. And I just wouldn't stop going forward. And same thing in training, same thing. My last sparring day, Saturday, Dean facilitated it, and I was just a machine. And I was just kicking and punching, kicking and punching. And no matter how many rounds we did, my output didn't decrease, my intensity didn't decrease, and my ability just to think myself through the situations and not just make it a drill and really make it the fight increase. So that's kind of how the mentality was controlled. And my goal is just to make that happen Saturday.
Ultimately, did you answer that question from Antonio?
Yeah, I answered that question for him, and it took a couple of days. I was supposed to come back, and I decided I was being pushed in a way I hadn't been pushed in a while. I wasn't the chef in the kitchen calling the shots on what the training. I didn't know what the training was that day, and I had to go in there and do it anyway. It really didn't matter what I did earlier that day. He was still going to do whatever he had planned to do. And he asked me what I was thinking the next day or so. And I said, nobody should make me back up. Nobody possess anything. Nobody hits as hard as Nate Marquardt. Nobody has submission like Damian Maia. Nobody should make me back up. And he said, that's what we need to say. So
I'm sure you've seen there's a trend lately in the UFC, former champions, former title contenders, a lot of them leaving, right? Yoel Romero Anthony Pettis, Overeem, JDS, just to name a few. When you see that and considering the losing streak, what do you think?
I think everybody has their own journey, and I don't really compare my journey to Anthony's nor Yoel's. When you look at me, you know, I've always had a little bit different of a role than everybody else. Like, I'm not like a formal title holder. I'm a 5-time champion. Anthony is my dog, but Anthony never won 5 world titles. You know what I mean? Yoel never won 1 world title. And those guys, they went on to do things that I think that some people don't understand, because UFC has such a strong armament, such a strong brand, and such a strong. They're the number one, league in mixed martial arts. You know what I mean? So you want to be in the number one league, and some people can't understand how a former champion or a title contender would want to go to a separate league. They don't understand the economics behind it either. Those guys are going to go. It's almost kind of like a retirement deal. It's like a 401k. It's like they've done all the hard work, and now they're going to another organization where they may make more money and fight opponents that aren't as difficult as some of the opponents they may see in the UFC. So I wish them well in their career. But for me, mine's always been about legacy, and it's always been about mastery. It's always been about being the greatest. And I think that me losing or taking 3 lessons in a row, if I didn't learn from those lessons, then they become losses. We talk about sounding cliche, but that's real life. I can sit back and hunker back and cry out for River and look at Usman walk around as a champion, and look at Gilbert Burns get a title shot when I could have had jumped back in the seat if I beat him. I don't even know what Kobe doing. I can't watch it because it's just too much. But I know he's doing something. You know what I mean? I could do that, but at the end of the day, I had to go back. What stopped me? They didn't stop me. They really didn't even beat me. I beat myself, because I didn't show up. I didn't perform. I didn't execute, and it was me versus me the whole time. And it took me 3 lessons to really recognize that. So I'm not looking at what's next. I'm not looking at if I'm going to go out here and go crazy so I can stay in the UFC. I'm not looking at leaving the UFC. I'm not looking at anything besides this fight. And after this fight, I'm going to take this fight and I'm going to just really just sit and look at the big picture. Like, do I want to consider taking some fights at middleweight? Do I want to consider, making another run at this welterweight title? What do I want to do? But the best scenarios are going to come from a dominant victory in this fight.
Is there any chance you win this fight and you just walk away
from the sport?
Yeah,
fighting. I don't think so. I'm getting way better, and it's scary to me because like I got another level. And McKee at one point at the training camp asked me the same day. He said, "Are you still in this? You know what I mean? Or do you still want to fight? Are you still in this?" Because he didn't understand that my body was beat up. I've been boxing in the morning, then doing striking there, which I didn't expect to do, and then doing Muay Thai at night. So 3 times a day I was kicking and punching. My body was up. I'm not 25. So when I started going to Cairo and I started getting massage, and I took 1 day of rest and I came back and I was a machine, that's the Tyron that he remember. But he told me my last day of training, when I broke everything we did, I exceeded everything, every training session, every rep, all the things that he put me through. I had my best day on the last day. And he said, "Tyron, you got another gear, you got another level." You know what I mean? But it's another gear and level that people may see that you have. You got to want to tap into that. And I think I want to tap into that. I don't want to leave this sport with regret. So if I got another level, and many people saying I got another gear, all my coaches agreeable on it, I want to tap into that level. So when I start fighting hard, coming away healthy is going to allow me to be able to train in between fights. You got to think about Usman. Usman fight, I went to that fight injured. I went into the Damian Maia fight injured. I injured my shoulder there. I injured my foot against Gastelum, my rib up against Colby. My hamstring was torn against Robbie. And between every fight, I never really got a chance to jump back into training and start being a student. I was rehabbing, and I was getting surgery. Rocco, chill. I was getting surgery, and TJ busting out. I was getting surgery, and I had to sit down for a minute. You sit down for a minute, you get fat. You know what I mean? You're not training. You got a labrum tear, you recovering that. Got a broken foot, you recovering that. You got a torn CMC joint. I messed it up in Darren Till fight when I cracked him upside a nugget. And there's very few fights that I came win the last 4 or 5 fights. That wasn't it. Gilbert Burns, I went into that fight with an injury. I was training for the calf kick, and I got kicked in the calf in training. And from that point over, like, touch it with a pinky finger and it'll blow up. And he found it, located it. And I left the arena with my leg, my quad looking the same as my damn calf and leg. And took 4 to 6 months to really start being able to put pressure on it. So I couldn't train in between fights. And I think part of me didn't want to train either, though. So it's kind of like I'm injured, but this fighting stuff, when you kind of paint it as a certain figure, it don't really become that fun to you anymore. Because I was so happy to prove people wrong. That was my motivation. I wanted to prove everybody wrong, and I did it for years. So many times I proved everybody wrong, but when I got tired of doing that and that wasn't enough for me, then what was it? I should have been trying to prove my mom right, my kids right, my coaches right. And now the mindset shifted. I don't need to prove people wrong because it's millions of those, but it's maybe 20 people in my small circle that I can prove right, that are taking the time out to train me and invest into me, that I can prove right. So that's kind of what I'm on.
Along those lines, after the Colby fight, there were people saying you should consider retirement. Did you ever consider it?
I mean, it's funny that everybody wanted me to consider retirement, but so many fighters in the UFC, so many fighters that had lost several fights, 3, 4, 5 fights in a row, and they may switch a weight class. And, we forgot they lost a fight, but they get a win, or, you know what I mean? So for me, like, why would I consider retirement? I lost to the champion 1 and 2. I didn't lose to Boo-Boo the Fool. You know what I mean? I lost to guys that were either the champion or guys that were contending for championship fights. And I never, ever, like, it used to be the rule that somebody off of a loss fight somebody off of a loss. Not me. I lost Usman, then I fought who? Gilbert. Then I fought Colby. Then I'm fighting Vicente. All those guys are off of wins. All those guys are promising prospects. All those guys have, been in battle tested. And I haven't had an easy fight ever in the UFC, ever. I've never had a tune-up. I never had a get-back, bounce-back fight. And why would I assume to get one now? To be honest, I really haven't had an easy fight since maybe my second or third Strikeforce fight. You know what I mean? That's the last rule. Like, okay, you're just supposed to win this fight. If you don't, you really up. I haven't had those fights.
When you were offered Vicente, what did you think? Like, was this guy on your radar, or did it kind of catch you by surprise?
I thought they was gonna let me fight like an OG. Like, I thought maybe like a Cowboy Cerrone or Tony Ferguson or, Chiesa or Robbie Lawler. I thought it was going to be one of those fights, but to be honest, they could have cut me. They could have let me go. So I wasn't really in a picky position to be like, okay, I ain't taking this fight. Who is he? No, who am I right now? I'm not like some prom queen right now that's off of, 5 wins in a row. So at the end of the day, I'm looking at who he is and what type of fighter he is and how I can look against him. And if I fight well, I can look really good against Vicente because he's going to come, he's going to fight, he's going to be durable. And, if you watch the way that Wonderboy fought him, that was Wonderboy's best fight. And it wasn't because it was his easiest fight. It's because Vicente is going to push you. He's going to keep coming back. So if you land a whole bunch of punches, it's not going to put him away. So you got to really work for 3 to 5 rounds to get him done, to get the fight done. And I don't know if I've ever seen anybody finish Vicente in the UFC. I don't think he's been finished. But I fought a lot of guys that hadn't been finished until I did it.
And so at this point in your run, and some people like to answer this question, some people don't. I'll ask the question anyway. You can answer if you want. How many fights left on your UFC deal? Do you mind telling us?
Ariel, I like you because you be right to the questions, man. You know what? There's always one fight on your deal for me because you can have 10, you can have 3, you can have 1, but if you don't do your thing, they can always say sayonara. So I don't really focus on that. I'm just focusing on this fight, and I want to go out there and just be performance centric. I want to focus on performance. There's so many things I can think about. I can run you off a list of things. I can do this for my city. I can do this for my kids. I can do this for my mom. I can prove that haters wrong. I can beat this guy. I can jump right back in title contention. I can go back and avenge my loss against Gilbert, Colby, Usman, and I can be right back in the top. I can move up to middleweight, and I've already beat Gastelum and Till. One more win, I can jump into. I can't do that, man. All I can think about is performance. And that's what I'm doing. I'm minimizing everything else, reducing all the other distractions and the background noise and just focusing on that. And if I can do that, just put positive thoughts in my mind, positive thoughts in my mind. Because sometimes you think of the negative all day long. And like, why would you do that to yourself? It's already a chance those things can happen. So for me, one fight, it's always one fight from now on, no matter what my deal says.
Will Antonio McKee be in your corner on Saturday?
He won. I can only have 3 corners because actually this is my first 3-round fight since 2015.
Wow. Yeah, that is wild.
So that's crazy. I haven't had a 3-round fight in so long. So it's my first 3-round fighter. I can only have 3 cornermen. So I'm gonna roll out with Dean Thomas, Eric Brown. I'm going with my training partner, Daryl Cobb. Because of the pandemic, we can't have more people. So I really need someone that's been there with me all throughout camp that can train with me. So McKee will be there in spirit, but don't be surprised if you see him in a corner in some future fights.
Yeah, UFC 183, January of 2015 against Kelvin Gastelum was your last 3-round fight.
Yeah.
What a run, man. Unbelievable.
Last 3-round fight, and this is my first non-main, co-main or main event fight.
Well, I think you might be, I mean, I don't know if you want to call it co-main, but like, I think did you get bumped up because now there's no Volkanovski Ortega? So I think you're the second to last fight.
What happened to that fight?
Well, you didn't see it. I guess you're really in the zone.
No, I don't watch it.
Volkanovski unfortunately got COVID, so the fight got canceled.
Damn, sorry to hear that. No, I didn't hear that.
So I think you might be the second to last one. But, you know, in any event, the last time we saw you, of course, you know, there was that pre-fight press conference and you were sporting the Black Lives Matter gear and didn't have a lot to say. Are you going to do a similar thing this time around for Media Day and whatnot? Do you have a message that you want to say to people?
Yeah, I mean, I still believe Black Lives Matter, no matter if the presidential campaign is over with or not, but I also believe Asian lives matter too. I got a lot of Asian friends, Vietnamese friends, Chinese friends. My Cairo that'll be out there with me is Chinese, and I don't believe in hate in general of any nationality, any race, any hate crime. So I just don't have much to say. Like I'm an OG right now. Like I used to be that young rising star. I'm not him no more. Like what the fuck am I gonna call somebody out? Like who am I gonna call out? I'm the person that everybody want to call out because they think I'm down and out, but they got another thing coming. So for me. What do you want to hear me say? You want me to promise you I'm going to win on Saturday? You want me to tell you that I've done everything in my life right now and everything's going to change? You want me to give you all my personal business and give you excuses on why I lost? No. Why? I don't owe you. All I owe you is to make weight and walk out there. I owe it to myself. So I'm not going to have much to say because there is nothing to say. If you want to see what I've done, check my resume out. Check out what I've really done. You know what I mean? Check out, like, look back and look and see what I did against people in their prime. Not Robbie now. Robbie when he was fighter of the year back to back. Look at, you know what I mean, the people that were on those streaks and Wonder Boy when he was untouchable. You know what I mean? I look back at that fight and I look back at Wonder Boy. I was watching a fight Vicente just to study some film. He's, in my opinion, he's still right there. You know what I mean? Wonder Boy is an amazing fighter, and I'm really thankful that I was able to compete against him in that era and to beat him, man, maybe one of the biggest victories of my life, looking back, you know what I mean? So shout out to Wonder Boy too. I gave him a lot of during those training camps and stuff, and I misread him. We've kumbaya since then, but I've done some remarkable stuff in this sport, and I still think the best is yet to come.
2 last things. Just curious, do you think Masvidal beats Usman next month?
Masvidal didn't have a long training camp, but Masvidal trains year round. And I got a bone to pick with Masvidal and Abe for coming to St. Louis for the NCAAs. In St. Louis, his mom didn't even call me. So They called me for the hookup on the food, but they didn't hit me up to come chop it up with their boys. So, but Masvidal is always dangerous. He's in such a dope spot in his life, you know what I mean? things have really opened up for him. He's really cleared out, but he don't let the hype fool you. Like, he's always training. That's one dude that's always training, like nonstop. He just loves training. I'm very impressed with him coming from a street fighting background and being in, so many MMA fights that he still want to train that much all the time. He came out here. He's such a fan of wrestling. He was so happy to meet these guys. And I think for him, a full training camp for Usman is going to make a world difference. But you also got to recognize Usman didn't have a full training camp for him either. Usman had a training camp for Gilbert Burns. So now, or Colby or whoever he was supposed to fight. But now he had a full training camp for Masvidal. So, I mean, it's hard to say. It's a good fight. I'm always going to root for my dog, Masvidal, unless he's fighting me or, I don't know, a teammate or something like that. I just send neutral. Like, when he was fighting Askren, of course, I'm not going to root for him in that fight, but I just stood back and just prayed nobody got hurt, nobody got injured, and just, I didn't even watch the fight. I just kind of, let it happen. So I'm a root for Masvidal to win, but it's very tough. It's very tough to see who's going to win that fight.
Well, Masvidal recently was seen helping out Jake Paul. I do believe you will be cornering Ben as he fights Jake Paul on April 17th. Michael Chandler, your Mizzou alum, has predicted a 7th round victory for Ben Askren over Jake. I mean, you've known Ben for so long, and you'll be there, right? You'll be in his corner, correct?
Yeah, I'll be there at the fight.
How do you see it going down?
I think, in my opinion, is the later the fight goes, the worse it gets for Jake. Jake's he's an athlete, and he's training. From what I understand, he's training for real for this fight, but he may be a little bit more athletic than Ben, but Ben's been fighting against world champion and world-class strikers his whole career. So seeing punches coming at him is not going to be anything new to Ben. So I think Ben's going to be a little bit more at advantage. He competed in the Olympics, won 3 NCAA titles, been in the NCAA finals every year since a freshman, Bellator, 1 FC champion, and fought some of the who's who of, freaking MMA in the UFC. So this ain't gonna be nothing new. And Jake's for leaking my number too, because now I got 300 or 400 people calling me every day, all day.
He did that?
He didn't do it on purpose. I'm gonna quit giving him. But he they try to prank me about the freaking deal, and I don't want to bring too much attention because then people will go back. And I have more people calling me, but he was pranking me, and I wasn't even feeling it. I was cutting away. I said, man, I really don't give what Jake doing. I'm getting ready for my own fight, and I just kind of left it at that. And then I think my phone number was kind of on the screen, so then all you got to do is press pause. So Bahrain, Yugoslavia, Toronto, all over the world, I've got phone calls.
Well, I can't wait for that. That should be a lot of fun, but I can't wait to see you back in there, my man. Always great to talk to you. Great to hear that you're in a good spot mentally, physically.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
I'm very excited good, about this. I'm excited. like the great Roy Jones once said, right?
What, I must have forgot?
Yes. Come on, Tyron. Come on, say it like you mean it.
I got it.
You'll say it on the microphone afterwards. Thanks, Tyron. I appreciate it. Good luck to you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.